on the call here. I'm Ian Gardner. I am the Learning Officer at YPO Gold Greater Sydney. Now we've got people from all across YPO today, so welcome to our chapter and welcome to everyone else. The chat function, I believe, is running, so feel free to jump in there and say hello. I mean, if you've got a specific question, you can put it in there, and our panel of crocodiles will probably pick up on that. Just a real quick background to me. I am a technology entrepreneur. I've been in YPO for about 8 or 9 years now. I had a video software business, then spent 4 years at AWS running their startup division. Now I'm a startup investor, so I'm an investment partner with Gelix Ventures, and I also help run Innovation Bay, which is a pretty long-running community for startup founders and investors in Australia. So really immersed in the startup sector. I love startups, so hopefully that's why we're putting this on. Learning officers always have a theme for their year. The theme for my year is germinate. Startups ultimately are like they're the elemental ingredients of germination. So what better way, I thought, to demonstrate some of the best startup talent and ideas from all across Australia, and also to hear from some of the best investors in our panel of crocodiles. Hoping that the takeaways for tonight for you, for everyone on the call, hopefully you'll be inspired to work with startups, maybe to invest in startups, or otherwise take some more risks in your business. Although after 2020, I'm not sure that any of us really feel like taking more risks. We have assembled today, as I alluded to, some of the most talented investors and entrepreneurs. So I'm going to get Heath to introduce them in a second. So we actually I was learning officer at Sydney Pacific 4 years ago. In fact, 4 years to the day, we ran a previous iteration of Crocodile Pit. It was amazing. It was back in the days when you could stand around, shake people's hands and drink wine together. So we did it at the Telstra Auditorium. We had 8 startups pitch. We ran a quick, you may have seen this in the covering email, but we did run a quick look back to see what happened to the 8 startups. So of the 8 that presented on the night, 2 of them have died, which was pretty sad. So Zakuri and Enabled Employment. One of them was acquired, Lone Dolphin, so they had a pretty good exit. And the other 5 are all doing really well. And in many cases, I've seen really large increases in their valuations. Valuation is on paper, as you'll all probably know, but the uplift has ranged from 4 times in one case to 20 times in another case. I'm not going to go into who did what. If you ping me offline, we can probably go into that. And those 5 were AgriWeb, Drive Yellow, Freight Exchange, Propeller, and Pi Exchange. And just, as a quick game, if you remember, anyone that was there did get to fantasy invest. So you had some money that you could invest in the startup. The winner in the night, by the way, was Zakuri, which was one of the ones that died. So just because you think it's going to be good doesn't mean it's going to necessarily work. But if you'd taken $100,000 and you'd put it equally in each of them, so 100,000 into each of those 8 companies, your paper worth right now would be about 3.5 million. So just shows the power of investing across a portfolio like that. And that's a pretty good return. I mean, obviously it's not on in cash terms, but it is on paper. But it's a really good uplift. So I guess, part of it is that we are relatively good at picking them, we hope. So the final note for me, you're not here to hear from me. I just wanted to say welcome and thank you. The startups really are the talent for this event tonight. So let's give them some love and support. It's really tough what they're doing. I mean, I think we've all been involved in business. We all know how hard it can be. Getting a company off the ground is brutal. It's very, very difficult. And putting it out there for other people to pick holes in and not tear down, but ask questions of is pretty challenging too. They're all going to have an ask at the end of their pitch. So if you're on the line and you can help with that ask, it could be, an investment ask, it could be an introduction ask. Please do reach out to them. And if you can't get in touch, then, just track me down or any of the other crocodiles and we'll put you in touch. So enjoy yourself. Heath, I'm going to hand over to you and I'm going to keep quiet from now on. So thanks for being here, and over to you, Heath.
Thanks so much, Ian, and welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to start by talking to Crocodile Pit, and then, as Ian said, actually have our technology startups come and talk to the panel. Let me quickly introduce our panel tonight. So starting with Andrew Gardner, founder and CEO of Gelix Ventures. Andrew's worked as an investment banker, entrepreneur, and like all of our panel, is very passionate about providing a supportive environment for technology startups. Ben Chong, our partner at Right Click Capital. Ben's got a significant track record of investing and building successful internet-related businesses for over 20 years now, and has a unique global access to the Draper Venture Network with Right Click Capital. Kim Jackson joins us tonight as founder and CEO of Skip Capital. 20 years experience. Kim has had as a trained engineer and an investment banker, quite a unique combination. She runs the private investment fund, both herself and her husband, fellow YPO Scott Farquhar, who may be known to you, well known to you as the co-founder and co-CEO of Atlassian, one of the great Australian tech stories. And last but no means least, Martin Duursma. Martin is a partner at Main Sequence Ventures, has over 25 years experience in senior executive, technologist, ventures, a business founder, angel investor, and mentor, both here in Australia and through Silicon Valley. And we'll get to hear from all of them tonight. So panelists Andrea, Kim, Ben, and Martin, welcome. Please take yourselves off mute. And I might start because as someone relatively new to the kind of tech ecosystem in Australia, tonight's resource is a book that came out, I think about a year ago, The Secrets of Sand Hill Road from Scott Kapur. And I think it's a great way to kind of talk about, amongst other things, the different investment cycles from, angel and family and friends through to seed, through to venture capital, growth, pre-IPO and IPO. I'd like to start by asking each of you, where do you sit on that capital life cycle? What is your kind of DNA? Maybe, Andrea, if we can start with you and Gelix Ventures.
Well, Gelix invests very early in the life cycle of a tech company. So we invest at the seed and pre-seed and seed stage, and sometimes at the Series A, early Series A. And so that's often where it's pre-revenue or very early revenue.
And how about you, Ben? You're a bit later with Right Click Capital?
A little bit later, but I think like Andrea, we like to invest in bold and visionary tech founders as they take their first steps. At the very earliest stage, and I think Andrea said it might be a pre-seed stage, we might be investing in a man, a woman, and an idea. And for those sorts of businesses, our first check-in might be a few $100,000 or less. For some of the later businesses where there is some technology, where there's some revenue, we might be writing our first check of a couple of $1 million.
And Kim, to some degree, Andrew and Ben kind of play in certain verticals, but Skip Capital captures everything from angel right through to pre-IPO and IPO. How does that work when you think about kind of investing across the different spectrum of the tech ecosystem?
Yeah, Heath, we have no rules. So we can invest all the way from pre-seed all the way through to later growth stage companies as well as pre-IPO companies. I think that gives us a lot of flexibility to just look for the best founders and best ideas doing the most interesting things. And we also have a listed portfolio as well as other asset classes. So that actually helps us to give our companies a lot of insights across different asset classes and different industries that they might not get otherwise.
And then Martin, I should have mentioned right up front, because I mean, your fund is very much a deep tech fund, in fact, the largest in Southeast Asia. Yep. Could you start by just explaining what is deep tech?
Well, for us, deep tech is we like to invest in companies that have some sort of scientific basis behind what they're doing. So we're looking for research connections. So typically we believe that if a company is connected to a university or some sort of publicly funded research organization or CSIRO, et cetera, we think they're going to have better runway, better capability, more protectable product capability, and ultimately hope that they'll be able to tackle a big global market. So that to us is deep tech. Sometimes people refer to it as solving a wicked engineering problem. That's another way to describe it. But there's typically some real deep engineering and science behind the companies we invest in.
Okay, and then a follow-on question, I guess, for all of you is, how do you go about assessing the portfolio companies and your investments per se? We often hear, it's about kind of talent or competitive moats or geographical footprint expansion. Maybe starting with you, Ben, what are the most important investment criteria that, the top 2 or 3 things that you're looking for when you look to partner with a business?
Thanks, Heath. I'd say it's 3 things for us: the team, the quality of the team, and within the team, we like to ensure that there is commercial talent, there is technical talent, there is also domain expertise. We like for there to be a big market that the startup is chasing. If you're just selling to owners of Kingswoods with the postcode of 2011, well, that's a very, very small market. Whereas if you're selling to perhaps manufacturing companies around the world, that's a much larger market. And then I think the third thing for us, some people will use different terms for this. You might call it execution, others might call it traction. And this is some signs that there is early success, whether it's in the form of in the very early days, a letter of intent or some pilots. In the later stages, I'd be wanting to see what the churn is with a subscription product.
How does that work for Kim, given your breadth? Do you have different kind of investment criteria based on the life stage, or given you have no rules and boundaries?
No, at the end of the day, it comes down to finding a phenomenal founder, finding deep, differentiated experience, someone who can come at a problem in a different way to how other people have been thinking about it before, and a global problem. So for us, it has to be global. We don't invest in an Australian-only business.
Okay. Is that, Andrew, do you have a geographical slant for your businesses, or?
Yeah, we're the same. Look, we invest really early, and that means that, it's pretty high risk, high return, and we're relying on 2 or 3 high performing companies to produce the returns across 20, 25 investments. So they have to have the potential to grow into a huge global market. If it's just, say, an Australian market, it's highly unlikely that it's going to have the potential for growth that we need to see.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll add.
Just sort of, I kind of agree with, everybody. I think we're probably all looking for sort of similar things, but with slightly different bents. For us, we're looking at deep technology, probably not the same as Martin. For us, deep tech means, not necessarily med tech or anything like that, but technology that provides that's very innovative, very different, and provides a really strong competitive advantage in that big global market.
How about for yourself, Martin?
Yeah, look, pretty much what everyone else has said. However, one of the other things that is maybe a little bit different to what we do is we actually form companies as well. So when we find, some great research that's happened in one of the universities or inside CSIRO, we're actually not shy about actually forming a company to take that research out, find a commercial partner, we'll provide the capital, and actually get involved, even at company formation stage. Again, for that big global market opportunity, like everybody else, anything we invest in, it has to be a global opportunity.
So then, for some of the people on the call, they may, the idea of tech investing may look very interesting, but they may not have the experience per se. And, I'm sure it's not lost on anyone on this call in the last week or so, as the earnings season has kind of hit us, that whether it's the FANGs, the WiseTechs, the Atlassians, even Microsoft, a number of the tech businesses have either exceeded or at least met analyst expectations in the public market. A lot of you play, well, some of you play like Kim in the public market as well, but most of you play in the private market. So how does someone on the call, if they were looking to invest, how do they think about investing in the tech ecosystem in Australia? Martin, you've been in the game a long time, what advice would you give?
Yeah, look, I'd certainly recommend, if you want to invest yourself individually into the tech market, I'd get involved with angel networks. I've been involved with the angel networks here in Australia since, I don't know, too many years to remember now. And I remember going to some of the very early Innovation Bay events right at the beginning. And that's when you start to network. You start to meet other tech founders, you meet other investors. Because a lot of this is actually investor to investor conversation as well. So when you start mixing in those environments, you hear what people are thinking, you can actually ask questions of other people. What have they done? What have they seen? Or you might see an interesting company, you can ask somebody else what they think. That helps you in your diligence process as you look at what you potentially could invest in. And of course, you've got the venture capital funds. There are a number of, venture capital funds here in Australia now. The industry is going pretty well. If you pay attention to when funds are raising, typically a fund only raises every couple of years. But, there may be a window when a fund is open for investment. You can then get involved with a venture capital firm as well.
And no doubt on the back of that, it helps that Australia now has through the ASX, I think the last year or so, we've got the tech index as well, which helps. But Kim, how do you think, what counsel would you give to people if they're looking to invest in tech, generally speaking?
I mean, there are no shortage of events in this space. So come along to some of them. It's pretty fun. There are worse things to think about than the future and new technologies that are coming up. I think one thing to think about for people on this call is, you probably have a business. What are the unique insights that you have in a certain marketplace? Are you in the property game? There's a lot of property tech coming out of Australia at the moment. Do you have a unique insight or some unique contacts that you can help a company with? And that might be a really great place to start.
Okay. So I wonder if, given this is a YPO event and we love lifelong learning, I wonder whether we can move the conversation on to success and failure. And Andrea, I'm going to start with you. Could you highlight what has been a great kind of tech success story that you've been involved with? And equally, what has been a failure and what have you learned from that?
So we invested quite early on in a company called StorageUse. It was the first to market with the deduplication software for the cloud. And what that means in a commercial sense is that taking the duplications out of big data massively reduces storage costs. So it had the potential to save big enterprises hundreds of millions a year in big data storage costs. So there was a huge market for it. And they were awesome founders, and we invested at the pre-pilot stage. So very, very early, a long way pre-revenue. And then 3.5 years later, it was acquired by Pure Storage, a NASDAQ-listed company, and we returned 10x to all of our investors. So that was a good outcome. And I think we've had one. Well, it's not. I need to keep this confidential. It hasn't failed, but it's not doing so well. And we invested in a really good tech guy who was a great developer. He had a really strong track record of co-founding a technology business in the same area and developing the technology, running a big global team because it's very deep tech. There's not enough expertise in one country. But he really didn't have the technical chops the commercial chops to actually commercialize it and take it to market. And so, what I've learned from that is that just how important it is to make sure that whatever tech they're developing is tightly tied to a market, and that there is a real appetite for that, rather than, a tech person getting excited by the technology and, spending lots of money on the dev team because that's what they know, and really not. Once the tech was at a decent stage, he should have been moving some of the capital away from the development and into the sales and marketing side of things. And it just was unbalanced. And so I learned a lot from that one.
Okay. So founder with commertional nous is a key attribute.
Well, you know what? I've invested in lots of companies where they have absolutely no commercial experience, but they have a real appetite to learn, and they step up to the plate really well. I mean, Juliet from Floodmat, she's awesome. I'm a big fan. We have a lot of those.
Yeah, well, we'll be hearing from Juliet very soon. But Ben, how about yourself for success and failure?
Sure. One of the successful investments we made a couple of years ago was into a computer vision startup that was spun out of a predecessor organisation to the CSIRO's Data 61. So what drew us to the company was the strength of the team, particularly as they showed off their prototype. And as they commercialised this technology, which was a visual search engine for trademarks, which had a large market, they found customers in the form of government IP offices. So think of the European Union's Intellectual Property Office, or IP, or Intellectual Property Australia. We're fortunate to exit that business after it was purchased by one of its distribution partners, which is a former division of Thomson Reuters. And I think Thomson Reuters thought that they could leverage their relationships with many of the other property offices in the world and other law firms. So this one investment more than returned our first fund and provided a significant win to investors over that period. And I think it was this combination of there being the big enough market, a great team, and they were able to get those runs on the board. Now, I'll contrast this with a learning, and that was an unsuccessful investment that we also made in this first fund. And it was a subscription business that involved selling products to children, in fact, to the parents of children. And we were impressed by this team, who also had the commercial, technical domain expertise. And we were drawn to the size of the market because there's lots of young children, lots of parents, and the positive operating metrics that were demonstrated by the startup early on. After we invested, we realised that there was difficulty in scaling the business, as in going from 1 to 2 to 4 and so on. So while those initial operating metrics were very attractive, it was very difficult to maintain those metrics. And I think in the early days, there was lots of friends and friends of friends who were very supportive. And I think that, along with some of the tensions which built up amongst the three co-founders, which saw one leaving, meant that the business did peter out. So I think the big lesson for us there was to take the early signs of success with a pinch of salt. Positive early signs are fantastic, but it's important not to hang the whole hat on that. And I think the positive thing for the way we think about investments now is to take that with a pinch of salt and to try to find other data points as we go and tick the box around those early proof points.
Great insights, Ben. Thanks for sharing those. And Martin, I appreciate Main Sequence Ventures is a little new, but you've been in the game a long time. Any kind of learnings or successes you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. From the Main Sequence perspective, I think the example I gave earlier around company formation is a great success, and that's a company called V2 Food, and that's around our thematic of feeding 10 billion people. We found some great research, actually was inside the CSIRO, that had been working this plant-based meat technology for a number of years. We saw customer pull, the market was looking for this type of product. So we then formed a company. We brought that team and the technology into V2 Food. We had a commercial partner come alongside of us that actually is a distribution channel for that type of product. And that company is now well on its way to being a unicorn. So that's a great example of, market pull, great technology, commercial engagement, funding from Main Sequence. We pull that stuff together and off it's gone like a rocket. On a failure side, I'm an angel investor as well. And so I'll point out an example there where I funded a company. I was one of the angels that funded a company where we had a sole founder in the company that was very charismatic, really could have a great vision about what they were doing. It was both, technical as well as sort of visionary product sort of category. And ultimately the company failed because it was too big a burden on that sole founder. He was very early in his career. As a sole founder, it was a massive pressure on him, and ultimately he had mental health issues. And I think that's a thing that we often don't recognize, that starting a new business is tough. It is really, really hard. And I think, the lesson there is that, being really careful that if it's a sole founder, putting the support network around that individual, maybe finding other co-founders that can help share that burden. So that's a lesson, I certainly learned in that one, where I think if I tried to find other co-founders or other network support, that might have had a different outcome.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Martin. Some really good insights. And Kim, last to you before we open it up and hear from some of our tech companies.
Yeah, sure. We are invested in 3 of Australia's most successful startups at the moment: Canva, Safety Culture, and Culture Amp. And they've all recently raised it. Well, Canva just recently raised it a $6 billion valuation. So we've seen some really great success stories in Australia, in particular with those 3 businesses. I think the learning there is often companies that are doing really well early on keep doing really well, and they look like they're very expensive to invest in. But those ones often are the ones that just keep performing time and time again. The failure and the learnings from the failure, I'll take you back about 11 or 12 years ago. This is an investment that I actually did through with some EO friends, so not YPO but EO. It's actually almost embarrassing to call it a technology company, but it probably would have been called that back in the day. It was a DVD vending machine business. You probably know where this story is going. The learning there is that technology can very easily be leapfrogged. I think back in the day, it wasn't that easy to see. Today, it's super obvious to see why that business isn't around anymore, or it is, but struggling, sold to a competitor. I think the learning there probably for YPOers is sometimes you see a business and it has a little bit of tech in and you think, oh, wow, great, I'm a tech investor. This is a technology company. Just be very careful. That's not a technology company. Sometimes just a little bit of tech is sort of worse than having no tech.
That's a great one to share, Kim. Thank you. So I think now what'll be helpful, I mean, hopefully that helps set the scene a bit about where everyone plays within the tech ecosystem, what their kind of area specialties are, your assessment criteria, what you're looking for, some of the successes and failures. And so now I'd like to turn it over to the best part of the event, which is actually opening up to are very successful thus far tech companies. And the first one I'd like to open up to is Phoebe Gardner. Phoebe, if you'd like to come off mute and show your video, welcome. So Phoebe is the CEO and co-founder of Beyond Ag, a food waste processing business using maggots. But far be it than me tell you all about it, but I'll hand over to Phoebe, who would spend about 5 minutes or so sharing her story about the business, and then we're going to take some questions specifically from the panel. So over to you, Phoebe.
Fantastic. I'll just pull my screen up and share the pitch deck now. Sorry for the delay, but thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much. It'll be great to hear the questions afterwards. And so, as Ian said, I'm Phoebe. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Beyond Ag, and we transform food waste into protein and fertilizer with insects. And our mission is to reshape the global food system. Food waste is actually the single largest material that's sent to landfill globally. And in Australia, we dump about 1/3 of all food waste, of all food, into our landfills, where valuable protein and nutrients rot into powerful greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, Aussie farmers in the meantime are struggling to feed their animals. In Australia, animal feed price more than doubled at various points over the last 2 years. And in addition, traditional animal feeds made with soy and fish meal have caused widespread deforestation and overfishing, so severe that globally, 1/3 of fisheries have already collapsed. We currently have the sort of dual forces of a growing population with increased per capita demand for protein, as well as these sustainability issues. food production will have to increase by approximately 60% by 2050. So because of this, we can't continue to just grow food in order to waste and replace it, destroying ecosystems and our climate in the process. Beyond Ag is creating a circular food system. So insects are nature's perfect upcycling machines, and they're able to create organic and natural proteins that we can then feed to animals and eventually people as well. Beyond Ag is paid 3 times. So firstly, food waste comes in. So waste logistics companies deliver food waste directly to our site and we accept a gate fee. We then process those insects in a 100% controlled lab environment to create 2 extremely high quality products that are consistent. So we have the insect protein going into pet and animal food and the organic fertilizer. Beyond Ag is about 14 months old now since we very first conceived Beyond Ag and joined the Melbourne University Accelerator program. And during that time, we built a fully functional lab on University of Melbourne ground, and we began our R&D process. Since then, we've achieved our target to process 2 tons of food waste per week in just a small 60 square meters, where we work with the full life cycle of the insect that we work with to produce both insect protein and fertilizer. We are extremely focused on prioritizing the quality of our products. And so we've used NADA certified lab testing, and we've worked with the same customers now for our whole journey, sort of approaching 9+ months, to develop high quality products that we know we can deliver consistently as we scale into our 30 times larger new site, which we're now currently fitting out at the moment. Going a little deeper into the products that we're creating, the insect protein that we create, we dehydrate it, and it's about 50% protein. One of the benefits is that because we're in a lab environment and we control everything, all the different parameters, we're able to have a really steady flow of production and understand very deeply our own system so that we know exactly what we're providing to our customers and that it's extremely high quality. The other thing that we've worked on is really targeting a very specific nutritional profile of the insect so that it can replace 100% of fish and soy meal in farmed fish, chicken and pig diets, as well as in pet food. So initially we focused on pet food, which has some really specific nutrient qualities that we've been chasing and successfully achieving and verifying through independent lab testing. On the organic fertilizer side, that's the insect manure that's produced. And we've shown that we're consistently getting double the nutrients of compost, so approximately an NPK of 422, just getting a little bit technical for a moment. One of the big findings out of our current system is that we have 200 times more microbial content than a standard compost. And that's on top of the chitin content, which is a special part of what we produce, where the insect exoskeletons that go into the fertilizer act as a deterrent to other insect attack on plants. We've currently launched 2 products combined with biochar in this space, and we have 2 other fertilizer companies waiting to develop new products with us as soon as we can supply larger volumes. And we've sold 100% of the product we've produced every week since we've started with excess demand. We have a team that's grown quite significantly now. So my background is actually, I studied architecture and mathematics, and I worked on really large, greater than $1 billion projects at Arup on urban infrastructure, like some Olympic projects, as well as the Central to Everleigh project in Sydney. And I really got to understand the flow and the way a city works, as well as large scale projects. Alex, my co-founder and CTO, he's a world-leading expert in the insect that we work with. and he's published with CSIRO as a first author and has a background in genetics and a master's in agricultural science. We've since grown our team to 6 people, and we've had a COO join us, who joins us from the World Mosquito Project, backed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So he was one of the first 3 in that group, grew that team to 70, and then scaled their project with mosquitoes, fighting dengue fever and Zika virus across 16 countries. So we're so pleased to be joined by such incredible talent now. Our growth path is that we very quickly built and codified our R&D in the site at the University of Melbourne. And what we did there is we answered the question of how do we deal and farm this insect in an incredibly efficient and reliable way. Now we've moved into a 2,000 square meter facility, and we're answering our next set of problems, which is around how do we scale the manufacturing around that insect to deliver the product volume in a larger volume. And so that's what we're tackling right now with the new fit out. And then we think that our belief is that we continue to scale into a 10 times larger facility again, and that's where we'll start to see us push into the animal feed market and then replicate from there. We see incredible opportunities in Southeast Asia, where Australia, particularly in the aquafeed space in the future. We would love for you to join Beyond Ag's mission at the moment as we make this leap from an R&D company into manufacturing at scale. What we're really looking for is people to advise us and provide any support and insights on setting up those large types of manufacturing facilities and all of the additional parts that we need to bring to our team and mature as a company now in this next step. But thank you so much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. I'll kick off. So could you tell us a little bit about the nutritional makeup of your food and how does that compare with alternative, what say either pets or livestock are currently being fed and the approximate price differences between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few things that we've done. We've specifically targeted the pet food industry at the moment as a stepping stone into the larger volume animal feed space. So our end goal is to target the replacement of particularly fish meal, which is the more difficult to achieve than soy proteins for us in animal feed. So, but specifically for pet food at the moment, what we've targeted is reducing our ash content and increasing the protein percentage in the dehydrated proteins. So we've now achieved a 50% protein where we started at 30 when we were first getting our testing done. And then we've also lowered the ash content into the correct range.
Right, so a scoop to scoop is somewhat comparable. And what would be the price difference between the two, especially when you're at scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking at the moment is the insect protein replacing 100% of the meat protein going into, say, a whole diet dog food in a dry pellet variety. So that would be up to 40% inclusion. At the moment, we're sitting around 30% as an ideal mark in the whole diet for the dog would be the insect protein. And then in terms of the price point, we at the moment are able to, we've increased our price from $3,000 to $15,000 a ton with the same customers. They're really excited to be part of our journey, and because there's limited supply of the product, we've been able to work with them on getting a price that works for us at the moment. We anticipate that we'll be able to be price competitive with a protein like kangaroo, like a lean processed kangaroo meat in pet food. That's our goal, to get to that as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much.
Hi Phoebe, a question for you on the sort of greenhouse gas emissions aspect of your business, which you talked about at the beginning. obviously as food waste decomposes as greenhouse gas emissions, how does your process help that? So for example, as the insects breed and they do their process, are there other types of gas emissions that you need to worry about or be concerned about? Like, just a couple of words about that.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that we think about a lot in our own process. So one of the benefits of working with the insects is that when food waste would normally go to landfill, it breaks down and releases methane, which is one of the more powerful gases, and I'm sure everyone's really familiar. The benefit with the insects is that they're able to, and the way we work with them is that they aerate the food waste as they work through it. They're extremely active. So the oxygen is getting around, and it means that we're producing undetectable levels of methane within our system. Because we're a closed system, we're really able to measure what we're doing. So what we're producing is CO2, and that's heat, and we've used heat, and so we use heat sinks in our own system between our labs in order to reuse that heat and reduce our energy load. The other thing we're producing is ammonia. So we're able currently to keep the ammonia in safe working levels in our labs, and that's through the AC system that we've designed as part of the core part of how we work with creating the correct environmental conditions for that insect. But so at the moment, what we look at is that we're offsetting 100% of the methane that's produced. We're capturing the CO2 and reusing it as much as we can. In the future, we would like to start measuring the impact of replacing unsustainable products with the insect protein on the market, but that's something that we're looking into in the future.
Can I ask a question? Phoebe, first, I think what you're doing is so exciting. It's amazing. Like it just ticks all the boxes for me. I just want to understand a little bit more how the insects work. It's not an area I know anything about. So I'm kind of assuming that you have insects that feed on all the food waste, and then you kind of process the insects themselves to create protein and maybe their feces or something. I don't know. So what do the insects do that's so unique?
Yeah, so what we do is when the food waste comes in, it actually goes through a fairly significant processing step where we take that food waste and turn it into an ideal feed for our insects. And we've done a lot of work in getting that exactly right so that we take a really diverse input and can create a really consistent output out the other side of the product. So that food waste is processed, it's fed to the insects. So they grow in, now we've reduced sort of in academic literature, they talk about a 12-day cycle. With our insect, we've reduced that almost to half that length. So we're able in less than a week to grow that insect and it only eats food waste, no additional water. So it grows from the size of a grain of sand to the size of like a jelly bean you'd buy at a chemist. So about 3,000-fold in volume. And at that point, all that's left is there's no food waste left. It's processed 100% of what was there. There's the big insect grub, and then it's the manure that is produced in that time. We take the vessel that they're grown in, and we mechanically separate through mechanical layers of sieves. So the insect and the manure is immediately as it is able to be sold on as the fertilizer product, whereas the insects then go on to be processed, dehydrated and milled into the protein meal that goes into pet food.
Thank you so much. Super exciting.
Phoebe, I have to say it's an incredible story, and it's amazing what you've done in 14 months. I think you said.
Yeah.
So full credit to you and your team. I'm conscious of time, but you did actually have quite a specific ask of anyone in the audience that actually had kind of scale up manufacturing experience. We will share your contact details together with the other pictures with everyone in the audience. But for now, can I thank you very much for presenting with us today? A great Australian ag tech story. and we wish you the very best of luck. And could I now move from AgTech to a company called Quantum Brilliance and ask Dr. Andrew Horsley to go on mute, to come off mute rather, and talk to us about quantum computing at room temperature. And Andrew, a very warm welcome to you.
Thanks very much. Great to be with everyone this evening. So is that coming through with my slides now?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Andrew.
Fantastic. Alrighty. So yeah, I'm Andrew. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Quantum Brilliance, and what we're doing is we're building quantum computers that aren't confined to the cloud, but used wherever computers are used today. So whether that's in a vehicle, or in a satellite, under your desk, or even ultimately in a mobile phone. Now, quantum is a leading solution to take us beyond the limits of the transistor. So it's about taking advantage of well understood phenomena that today's computers fail to exploit in order to solve certain problems faster, and actually much faster. So even though it's only the beginning of its journey, just last year we saw a single quantum processor outperform the 30,000 classical processors of what was then the world's largest supercomputer, and it outperformed them by a factor of 1,000. The problem is that the current focus of the quantum industry is in technologies that really have huge infrastructure requirements. So they're not suitable for supporting widespread applications. They're limited by cryogenics, by vacuum systems, complex lasers. And so they're fundamentally confined to this remote and mainframe role, and also limited in their integration with classical computers. So you have this thing in a room-sized computer in the next room, and so there's these latencies and other challenges that make it harder to actually achieve take advantage of the speed up that quantum can offer. So at Quantum Brilliance, we asked ourselves then, well, how can that be done differently? And can we actually find a way to make quantum something that you can just hold in your hand and use just like any other compute? And to do this, what we need to do is move beyond that mainframe model of quantum. And just like from mainframe in the 50s and 60s to introducing the microprocessor in the 70s, we'd need to then have a quantum microprocessor to enable that then explosion of use cases and breadth of applications. So that's then, unsurprisingly for the story, exactly where we've got to with Quantum Brilliance is room temperature quantum microprocessors that are powered by our unique diamond-based technology. And so by taking advantage of the extreme properties of diamond as a host material for our quantum bits, we're able to avoid the cryogenics, the vacuum systems, the complex lasers that limit these other platforms. And so we've got this pathway to quantum that is really an everyday thing. So where that's getting us, so we are looking to already put products into market. We're taking orders, in fact, for our quantum hardware products and looking to deliver those in the first half of 2021. So we've got customers, potential customers in our sales pipeline in North America, in Europe, and in the Asia Pacific. And what we'll do is then take these people on a journey over the next 5 years, scaling up the computational power using a new diamond fabrication technique that we've invented. And by leveraging the simplicity of the control systems that diamond requires, we can also then scale quantum computers down to something that, you know, instead of filling a room, is the size of a lunchbox or, you know, today's PC accelerator cards. So this is then something that provides supercomputer level performance for certain applications in something that you can hold in your hands. And what that means is then that quantum can be everywhere. So quantum can be ubiquitous. Instead of then the market, if by 2030 for this kind of mainframe quantum computers expected to be around $15 billion globally for the hardware, we can then expand that by expanding the vision of what quantum can be, by exploiting quantum and enabling it to go into things like self-driving cars, putting it in your hospitals, up in satellites, supporting signal processing, things like that. What we're then bit about ourselves, I guess, is we've got two physicists on the team who've founded us, and then also Mark Lowe, who joins us from a finance and biz dev background. He's kind of one of Australia's leading deep tech commercialization experts. So immediately prior to founding Quantum Brilliance, he was the new ventures manager for CSIRO's ON program. My personal background, my career has really been about turning quantum science into usable tools. So whether that's been in microscopes, in quantum communication systems, and now in computing. It's been a shift though towards using Diamond as the platform, because Diamond is such, of all the ways that you can build a quantum system, Diamond is such a practical starting point. You don't have to heat it up, you don't have to cool it down, everything works very well there. And so about 3 years ago, I moved back to Australia I'd been in Switzerland for 6 years, and to work explicitly with Marcus Doherty on this commercialization journey. And Marcus is someone I've been wanting to find an excuse to work with for a long time. He's really the guy for understanding the diamond quantum qubits. His PhD brought the theory of this system together for the first time, and he's been one of the key pioneers of the field. So all of the guys around the world, when they do something in the lab, they call up Marcus to understand what they just did and what they discovered. So it's been a fantastic journey working with him. Now we've got these partnerships with the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre in Perth as kind of our first commercial partnership there. We're working with them to put together a commercial, or rather a quantum innovation hub. So that's bringing together a community of users in Australia. For us, we're learning then about also the kind of helping them learn about integrating quantum into classical systems. And they're an excellent testbed for then larger international contracts into where we've also got deep relationships with some of the largest supercomputing centres in the world. I'd like to then put in this plug. So later this month on the 28th of August, you can dial in to Pawsey Quantum Friday. So we've been doing these events with them. This is the second in the series where the focus is about the Australian quantum industry and the opportunities that presents. So I'll be on a panel alongside CSIRO's Kathy Foley, Bill Bartee from Main Sequence will be there, as well as some of the senior scientists from Pawsey, and Sean Wilson, who's another founder of a really successful Australian quantum computing startup, who's now exited that building, that company. So the thing I then leave you with is, with this vision of quantum computing that we have, quantum is something that can come and give you benefits sooner than you would have thought, and in a very different and wider set of applications than you might have thought. So whether that's if you're working in the finance sector, whether you're in mining, in developing new scientific applications, in defence, these are all areas where we're able to work with you. We're working with some of Australia's leading machine learning companies to explore how quantum can be used, for example, to support onboard image processing in satellites. So we're able to, we've got products, both software and hardware, to support this application discovery and quantum readiness journey. And then we can take you to a very different place than any other quantum computing company in the world. So I'll leave it at that, but yeah, thank you very much.
Andrew, thanks so much for sharing. Maybe Martin, this feels very much like deep tech. I might go to you first and then Kim.
Yeah, I think absolutely this seems very deep tech. So Andrew, very interesting presentation, and I think quantum is an area that has lots of hype at the moment and lots of interest for a whole range of reasons. I think quantum has all these impressive, promises, and you showed some examples about what it could do in the future. You mentioned customers. I'm really interested to learn. You said people are wanting to order stuff from you. So what do these customers want to do? What are the things that they want to do with your quantum implementation?
Yeah, sure. And maybe I'll take the opportunity before I get to customers to speak to the hype a bit as well. It's because I want to make it clear that quantum is not the solution for every problem on the planet. Quantum is part of the solution. Our current computers are hitting a wall, and we need new types of computer to move beyond that. So quantum is going to be something that always works alongside classical computers. It doesn't replace it. And for some problem sets, it will, the new phenomena that it takes advantage of can then enable things that are otherwise impossible in any other way. But there's other classes of problems that maybe we need neuromorphic computing for, or we just need better implementations of what we have right now. So it's part of the solution. It's not the only bit of the solution. The customer space that we're working with, a lot of that is in the high performance computing sector. There's also other sectors like defense that we're engaging with. The customers in HPC though, there's kind of two big areas of interest for them. Internally, they see that quantum is something that they need to host in the future. And so right now they really don't know a lot about quantum. And so it's an internal upskilling process and getting ready so that they can support their users in the future. They're all about support, providing support and capability to their user bases. And so then what we're also able to do is then help them support their users now, where their users also need to understand quantum and start to have, have tools provided to them so that they can then develop quantum software platforms, quantum applications. This doesn't require a million qubits from day one. Just whenever you get a new tool, the first thing that you need to do is have a play with it, understand it, and you really need a testbed system for that rather than the billion-dollar machine. So we're able to provide then these customers with testbed hardware systems, as well as have, where we've got this first commercial engagement is actually in our quantum emulator package, which is then a full quantum software stack. But instead of connecting to hardware, there's a sophisticated simulation of a quantum computer at the base of that. And so that lets people then explore the full functionality of a quantum computer and what it means to integrate that into their workflows.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Andrew, where are we at in the evolution of quantum computing today? What can a quantum computer do today? And how can you do it better with Diamond?
Sure. So in terms of how we can do it better with Diamond, maybe it's that we're about middle of the pack in terms of performance. So for some metrics we do a bit better, for some we do a bit worse. The key message there is that we're not taking a big hit by going to room temperature and the convenience and the distributability of diamonds. So what Diamond brings is this completely different paradigm in how you can use and take advantage of quantum, and whether that's then having thousands of quantum computers instead of one or two that are attached to a supercomputer, or whether that's having it in all of these remote and distributed kind of applications. Where we are today is that quantum computers are able to do some things that are too hard for a supercomputer to do, but we haven't worked out quite how to do useful things with those particular things just yet. Now, part of the challenge there is that you need to outperform a supercomputer in order to do something useful, because that's the kind of size, weight, power and cost paradigm that we're operating in. So our first goal is actually then to basically get to where these guys are today, having that supercomputing level performance, but to shrink that down into something the size of a lunchbox, where you're then providing that in a comparable setting to a GPU card or something like that.
Thanks.
Andrew, can I firstly thank you for sharing your story and initiative with us tonight. It really is cutting edge technology and very exciting. And I think if anyone would like to know more, I think you said on the 28th of August was a pretty esteemed panel that you're participating in to learn more about quantum computing at room temperature, amongst other things. So thank you for sharing your story. And we wish you the best of luck with Quantum Brilliance. So moving from, if your brain's not spinning that much between AgTech and quantum computing, we're now going to move to Juliet Murphy, who joins us as the CEO and co-founder of a business called FloodMap, which is all about real-time flood mapping. Over to you, Juliet, and welcome.
Thank you, Heath. Thank you so much for having me on the Crocodile Pit today. It's a pleasure to be here and really excited to share with you our story. So let me make sure I'm sharing these slides full screen. Hope everyone can see that okay. So yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder at FloodMap. We're really applying technology to create a safer future, and what we're doing is quite groundbreaking. So I'll tell you a bit about it. Right now, it's no surprise to us that flooding is becoming more frequent and more severe every year. Flooding is now the costliest disaster in the US and many other countries, exceeding hurricane, impacting over 18 million lives and causing 96 billion or more globally. And this is projected to double in the next 10 years. So what may be surprising to some of you is that a lot of these flood damages are preventable. When Hurricane Harvey hit the East Coast in 2017, over 1 million vehicles were total write-offs, causing 4 billion in vehicle losses alone, which theoretically could be moved if people knew that their vehicle was going to be flooded. And when you look at the impact on industry, these losses are even greater. The same storm caused $40 billion in losses to energy, utilities companies who suffered energy losses, delayed exports, business interruption. And so the whole reason that a lot of these damages happen today is that warnings are just too broad. So what you're looking at here is a typical example of warnings that go out in the US and Australia. Some of them can be literally the half of a state. And so to get a message of this scale, people don't have enough information to be able to make actionable decisions and prevent the damage, because they just don't know that their residents or their assets are going to be impacted. So much so that the World Bank has produced research to say that 35 to 60% of damage, flood damage, is preventable with the right warning systems. And so that's something that we're really passionate about FloodMap, and we've assembled an incredible team just to tackle this problem, because we know why it's happening and we've built the technology to tackle it. Myself, I worked for over a decade in flood engineering and hydrology across Australia and Canada. And we now have a team of a couple of people with masters, PhD, and the rest engineers with domain experience across flood modeling, hydrology, coastal engineering, machine learning, software, and geospatial processing. We're growing the team at the moment, and we're really excited to have this team to be tackling this problem. So in order to sort of tell you a bit more about our technology, I think I have to give some more context to help sort of further understand the problem. If you're going to produce a flood forecast and provide accurate early warnings, there's 3 steps you have to go through. The first is meteorology. So one has to go through and predict where the rain is going to fall. And we have really incredible solutions for this in Australia and most places globally already with the Bureau of Meteorology or NOAA in the US. The second step is hydrology modeling. So this is the science of taking that rainfall prediction or the real-time rainfall that's hitting the ground, assessing how it interacts with the catchment, what evapotranspirates, what seeps into the ground, and then ultimately how much flow goes through the river system and what height the river will be. Again, this is done quite well at the moment. But the third step is hydraulic modeling. In order to produce a flood map, to be able to understand where the water will go, you need to do this step. And right now, hydraulic models take anywhere from 48 hours to actually, some comparisons on a large scale, 2 weeks to run these type of models. And hence, they're just not feasible now for government entities to run these and offer location-specific warning. So it's the big piece that's missing. So how we tackle that at FloodMap, we have an incredible system that firstly implements a large-scale automation process for hydrology, where we automate the catchment delineation and stream network builds across state level and national scale. And then this feeds into our own hydrology models, which we're developing, where we're doing it in a very different way than how it's been done for the past few years since the 1960s or so, where we're implementing machine learning and training models based on not only traditional parameters such as land use type, historical and observed rainfall and stream flow, evapotranspiration, but also incorporating how the flow at any one gauge learns and interacts with the relationships of all the other gauges in its stream network, being able to improve the amount of flood forecast time that we're able to provide and do it quicker, because this is a manual thing that's done today. And it also, yeah, it means that we're able to implement flood forecasting at scale, which is really not being done, especially for the hydraulic phase, really anywhere in the world right now. So right now we have 18,000 models running at continental scale across the US and 3,000 models here in Australia. And the next step that we've been able to do, which is a huge breakthrough, is our rapid hydraulic model. So traditional models tackle this in a grid approach where they're solving physics equations around continuity and momentum of the flow of water across millions of time steps and millions of grid cells, which means that their computation time is so lengthy. We approach the problem and solution more from a top-down approach, where we apply patterns and learning based on the whole catchment system and DEM as a whole, meaning that we're able to achieve run speeds of up to 10,000 times faster and use elevation resolution data up to 200 times more high resolution. So in essence, even though we make some compromises on our approach to the modeling, we're actually finding that our models are more accurate than the traditional approach because of our ability to be able to access more data. So the accuracies we're achieving, this is just a case study that we did with an Australian utility where we achieved 96% accuracy based on our modeled prediction of the flood inundation area and the observed flood inundation area. And so in a sense, we're going from something that this is a current warning here. You can see it's half the state of the Queensland. This is what you would typically receive today from the Bureau of Meteorology or the Early Warning Network, to going to something that looks like this, where, oh, just play a quick video here. No, never mind, I have some more visuals that will help explain that. So essentially we have three products. In terms of our business model, we sell access to this service as a data feed via API or web feature service. So we have three products: Forecast, Nowcast, and Postcast, that enable people to have data through the preparation, response, and recovery phase of emergency management. And so in a sense, it's enabling action-based insights. Where Forecast is 4 to 10 days of extra lead time, showing like location specific insights about what you can do to move assets or prevent damage. And similarly, the Nowcast and Postcast are showing updates during the event and after the event to help in the understanding which assets have been affected and helping businesses recover. So right now we're working in markets including government, insurance, utilities, mining, and energy. So far we've had quite the journey. We recently raised 1.3 million in seed funding last year, and just the other week we're announced as a successful recipient of the Accelerating Commercialization Grant. We've also been a successful recipients of quite a few other government grants and prizes. And growing revenue from a list of government entities as well as insurance companies here in Australia and the US, including the City of Norfolk, Department of Transport and Main Roads, State Farm, Suncorp, to name a few. And yeah, so to finish it up, I'd love to throw an ask out to everyone on the call there. We're right now looking for a talented operations professional to join our rapidly growing team. And we're not raising capital at the moment or anytime soon, but really looking to connect early with any deep tech and climate focused VCs in the US. It's a major market we're working in, and always love connecting with the right people that are interested in this sort of problem.
Juliet, that's a great story and a decent problem to solve for. So it's very exciting. We've probably got time just for 2 questions, but maybe if I could start with Andrew and then Ben. Or maybe Ben first. Andrew.
Sure. Could you tell us, Juliet, thank you very much for the presentation. Could you tell us a little bit about the sales cycle for your product?
Sure, Ben. We've been learning so much about our sales cycle recently. It's the sales cycle depends on which type of entity we're working with. Governments can be quite a long sales cycle, but we found that insurers and utilities tend to work slightly quicker. So it can be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. And typically it's quite an educational sales cycle. So we need to involve not only people on the sort of specifically sales and growth side, but also engineers or sales engineers, if you like, to educate the client on what the technology is doing and essentially why it's worth what it is.
Thank you very much, Juliet.
No worries.
Juliet, it's Andrea. We are, as you know, huge fans, and we're really proud to have invested in you and FloodMap. We love what you're doing. I'm just wondering, you've got quite a small team and much bigger than it was, and you're selling into, you know, big enterprises and governments, which we've just learned, you know, they're quite long sales cycles. I'm just wondering what your plans are to scale up into these, you know, big markets that are out there.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. We're looking to hire a few more people right now on both the technical and the growth side. We right now have a plan to open up a operations in North America to help us kind of scale into the US, which is one of our focus markets right now. That's been definitely harder given COVID and the fact that all my travel to the States was canceled this year. But essentially, we're commercializing right now the technology, getting a few major customers on board. And then after we raise Series A funding, intend to sort of really apply our learnings in sales so far to build out a repeatable sales process in terms of like a team of sales engineers and structured engineers supporting kind of, I guess, customer success equivalent to support our customers that come on board. And so then at that point, we'll be opening up our model coverage from Australia and US and moving into then Europe and Southeast Asia, with ultimately likely a headquarters in Singapore and Zurich or some other locations like that.
Thank you.
Right. Well, Juliet, thank you so much for sharing your story. And it really is, it's very exciting, I have to say, as someone sitting on the other side hearing this story. So best of luck with your endeavors. Some bold achievements to date and some courageous steps ahead of you. So we wish you all the very best for your future endeavors with FloodMap. Thanks, Juliet.
Thanks so much.
And just to flag for everyone on the call, we are running about 10 minutes late, but this is certainly worth hanging around for, because as we've moved from ag tech to quantum to flood mapping, we're now going to invite Alex Wyatt. Alex is the founder and CEO of August Robotics, and it's a global robotics and artificial intelligence company. Alex joins us from Shenzhen in China, and welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As you mentioned, we're in Shenzhen, so rather than tempting fate with the multinational connection, Ian has kindly offered to share the slides from the domestic waters of Sydney. So I'll ask Ian to do that. You could share.
There we go.
Very good. So look, I'm not very good at preliminaries, so I've asked one of our robots to do the preliminaries. Ian, could you click play?
Sure.
And hopefully we'll see Lionel the robot do some preliminaries for us.
I'm assuming there's no audio, Alex, is that right?
No audio, although it seems to be going quite slowly. Oh, what a shame. Anyway.
No, it's good from this end.
Okay, good. Robots drawing on the floor.
Delighted to present at YPO Sydney 2020. Fantastic.
There we go. So this is, yeah, it's a bit slow to me, but anyway, let's move on to the next slide. So I don't have to do the preliminaries. We've let our robot do that, did that this morning. Move on to the next slide. August Robotics is an unusual business in the sense that, you know, we have a lot of different businesses, right? So we're an umbrella of robotics businesses. I've been told very strictly, I got 5 minutes. I couldn't possibly introduce any of these 4 businesses in 5 minutes. I will attempt to do one, but I certainly wouldn't be able to do all 4. But just very, very quickly, Lionel on the left, whom you saw a little video of, you know, robotically helps exhibition centres to put the CAD plan of the exhibition onto the floor. So whether that's booth numbers or electricity points or rigging points or codes or booth names or anything like that, there's very, very complicated CAD plans. It draws it on the floor autonomously. So you email the CAD plan to Lionel, push a button, and Lionel will draw lines. Why he's called Lionel, it's a terrible dad joke. But Lionel will draw that CAD plan onto the floor. It's like a giant printer. And in the process of doing that, we ended up with some pretty nifty localization tech, which is basically state-of-the-art. Our intention wasn't to create state-of-the-art technology. We wanted to combine off-the-shelf components in Shenzhen. But ultimately, to get the accuracy that we needed, we ended up having to do that. So in a sort of 20 to 30,000 square metre exhibition hall, Lionel will know his position to less than a centimetre. We get it to about 3 millimetres accurate if we want to, which is a phenomenal achievement to know in a space that big where you are to 3 millimetres and then be able to move that. But we're not going to talk about Lionel today. Lionel's a successful business. You can see it on the internet. We've had lots of success with exhibitions in Germany and just recently gone to the USA. Obviously not doing much at the moment, given there's no exhibitions because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but very successful until such time as COVID-19 came. And we're obviously hoping for the exhibition industry to return, and Lionel will come out of mothballs and keep helping our clients and our long-term partners to do that. What I wanted to talk today, we also have robots that we're building now in the construction industry and also one for the infrastructure industry. But the one I wanted to focus on today is topical and also the subject of my ask, given we only have 5 minutes, and that's our disinfection robot. We'll probably give him a name like Lionel at some point, maybe a more gender-neutral name. We just couldn't resist the dad joke of Lionel for drawing lines. So maybe one of the asks is a new name for DisiBot, but for now we're calling it DisiBot, disinfection robot. If we can move on to the next slide to sort of dig down into that one.
Yep, I think it's there, Alex.
Oh, it's there. Okay, I've just got a bit of a delay. So ultimately what DisiBot is about is essentially to use robots rather than people to perform disinfection services, right? Obviously extremely topical right now. The primary reason for this is that a lot of the most effective disinfectant agents, specifically UV light, cannot be done by people on a long-term basis. Because you get too much exposure to UV light as a cleaner, then that's harmful to your health, okay? Robots, of course, don't have to worry about that. Right? We're not going to have a robot getting skin cancer or burning their eyes from the UV. And so therefore, in this industry, I think the post-pandemic times, like we're not talking about this specifically as a coronavirus robot at all. We're talking about post-pandemic times when I think people are much more sensitive to ideas of hygiene, much more sensitive to things about, health. And also demonstrating to their customers that they're taking this seriously and it's safe. So think of it like a cruise ship or something like that. I mean, their business is screwed at the moment, right? I mean, the first cruise I saw after coronavirus has already got an outbreak on board. No one's going to get on a cruise ship unless they can convince their potential customers that they're going all out with hospital grade disinfection, right? And doing that with people is really hard. Doing it with a robot that can use the very, very best infection techniques is something where we think there's an enormous opportunity. We've got an ability to deploy lots of different disinfection methods, whether that's UV light or sprays or various other things. There's no risk to the worker health. And there's all sorts of benefits that you get from bringing a fairly manual process, which is disinfection, into the digital age. So you can remember where you did, where the robot will know exactly what it disinfected. It can record what it disinfected. Frank the cleaner may have forgotten to do the bed frame, but actually they did the television, but you never quite know, and you're always uncertain. With a robot, you know for sure what's been done and what hasn't. You know exactly when it was done. It can be done on a schedule. It can focus more on the high touch areas. It's not just this sort of manual effort. And we're thinking of applying this robot, and we've got, there'll be slightly different robots for every different industry, but you can see all the various use cases, right? Airports, cruise ships, casinos, hotels, public transport, hospitals. I mean, there's all sorts of different areas that will benefit from this. And we're really excited about that as a general use case of our existing technology, that localization and navigation technology. Because ultimately, if you're deploying UV light, it's really no different to getting around an exhibition hall. You just need to get to the right place in the right amount of time and do that autonomously. And then our last slide, I don't know if I'm over the 5 minutes or not yet, but last slide is really just about one of the specific areas that we're heading, which is hotels. And this will be the first one. So we've spent a long time sort of working through different use cases. We're going to go for 3 or 4 different use cases, but hotels is where we're going to start. And this one's a relatively simple implementation. The idea is that the robot goes together with the cleaner into the hotel room, and they do the job together, right? So the robot enters with the cleaner. It's almost like a little dog, right? Comes together with the cleaner. The robot will enter with the cleaner into the room, will exit with the cleaner in the room. But instead of the cleaner having to disinfect, at the moment, the cleaners clean everything that looks dirty, and then all the stuff that looks clean, they have to disinfect it anyway in case there's some invisible viruses there. Whereas what we're looking at is the robot will do the invisible viruses, the cleaner will just do what's dirty, and that means the cleaner can leave the hotel room much faster. And we've spoken to, I think, more than 100 hotel industry experts now, and they're all talking about minutes per room being the absolute key criteria. And so if we can go together with the robot and they can get their minutes per room down from 18 to 12, they're saving, 33% of their costs. And then that liberates money to pay for our robot. Before you even think about the fact we're doing a much better job of the disinfection, we're getting it out of the existing budget. And so we're really looking at cost savings through the reduction of time spent. They don't have to worry about, disinfection materials. So Marriott uses all this electrostatic disinfection and what have you that's really expensive. There's all the PR benefits from demonstrating to the hotel boards that, customers that the rooms are clean, peace of mind, reliability. And then look in the future, obviously the robots will only be cleaning the rooms between sort of 10 and 3. We hope that it can also be in the downtimes, cleaning the lifts, cleaning the gym area, various other sorts of things for disinfection, utilizing the autonomous robots that we have. Final statement is, what is our ask? And I just want to be very clear about our ask. We would love introductions to senior hotel executives in Australia or indeed elsewhere, Hong Kong, Singapore, anything like that. This robot is midway through development. We'll be looking to launch it before the end of the year. We would love it if anyone in YPO, any of the panelists, any of the members of the audience would be able to give us some introductions to those people that would really help our business development efforts for what we think is a really exciting new robot.
That's great. And Alex, what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Email alex@augustrobotics.com is probably best. So.
All right.
That's a great presentation. Thank you, Alex. We've probably only got time for 2 questions, starting with Kim.
Yeah, I'll start. Hi, Alex. Thanks for that presentation. That was fantastic. I actually have 2 questions for you, but they're both quick. The first one is, how do you make sure the cleaner is protected walking into the room with a robot using UV light? And the second one is a little bit more broad. It's what is the hardest part? What's the biggest challenge for you in creating a new robot?
Yeah. We create lots of new robots, so let me start with the second one. Actually, from our point of view, I think people expect when they ask that question that you'll talk a lot about technology. From our point of view, what we think is the most important thing, whether or not it's the hardest, the certainly thing we spend the most time on, is to get the product market fit right and to do the commercial research. So, we're a bit different in the sense that, we have a platform, a robotic platform that we then apply in lots of different commercial areas. And we'd have to do, I mean, if I had Vuyo on the call or some of my colleagues, they would do so many phone calls with so many experts, because you've really got to understand, everyone loves the idea of a robot, but you've really got to dig into, do they not just love the robot? Are they willing to pay for it? Are they willing to change their process in order to do it? Or if they're not willing to change their process, how can we make the robot fit into their process, right? Which is how we ended up with the hotel and having the robot together with the, with the cleaner. Because previously, if you didn't have the technology where the robot and the cleaner could be together, they'd have to change their process, and the cleaner would do one room and then the robot would do another, and they'd have to remember how, and it was just too much. And so I would say the most challenging thing for us in terms of, developing new robots, and we do this periodically with different sorts of business lines, is really making sure we're addressing a pressing market need, rather than people just saying, oh, a robot, how cool is that? Yeah, we'd love a robot. Like, okay, how much of an issue is this for you? How much are you willing to pay for it? How would you do it? And really getting to the essence of that. And we put an enormous amount of time into that. We speak to hundreds of people before we write the first line of code for any new robot. So that's the first one. In terms of your original question, probably difficult to reveal at a public forum, because it's obviously the key thing where we'd be differentiating from competing robots in disinfection is a way in which the robot and the cleaner can be together. I guess I can say we're utilizing trigonometry a lot, and I would be delighted with any of the crocodiles to do a little bit more offline in a less public sphere. But that is an absolute, I mean, Kim's, as usual, you got straight to the point. I mean, that is the key competitive advantage, and making sure that that cleaner is never being exposed to direct UV light or indeed reflected UV light, and knowing where the cleaner is at all times is the way in which we're going to be able to do that. Doesn't really answer your question, but hopefully sufficiently for the purpose.
Martin, do you have anything for Alex?
Yeah, I do actually. Love the presentation, Alex, the energy you've got there. Definitely agree that in the disinfectant space, opportunities abound, especially as robots can be much more consistent about what's been cleaned, what hasn't been cleaned, where humans forget. I just see some of the video of people cleaning, and you can know they're missing spots. So great idea. My question's around, this is a difficult problem, humans working with robots, right? My view, no one's really cracked that nut yet. This sort of cobot, co-working with a human, especially in an unstructured area. I get your capability for the floor marking, great application. That's a good application for a dedicated robot. So in the case of hotel rooms, what's your key insight? A bit to Kim's question, no one's really, I haven't seen anyone that's cracked that, how can you guys crack it when no one else has been able to crack that sort of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both a specific and a general question. All right, so I mean, our approach to robotics is to what we call specialized robotics. Yeah. So it's not about dealing with ambiguity, can we wash the dishes, can we look after the kids, or anything like that. It's doing one thing and one thing well. And very often that will be only part of a business process, right? So, for trade shows, we're only doing a very small part of the trade show setup process. And so what's really critical for humans and robots to work together is the hand-on and the hand-off. Because we're going to leave the stuff that's better suited to humans. We're just going to do the stuff that's, got a lot of repetition, high level of accuracy, needs speed in an unsafe environment, something like that. The things that are better suited to the robots. And so our approach to robotics is to say, right, we're going to build a very specialized robot to do just that. And then we're really going to understand the business fundamentals to ensure that we can hand on and hand off without them having to change any processes. And I think if you get the hand on and the hand off right, and we had to put a lot of time and effort in that into the trade show industry, because whilst it might seem like it's a discrete task, it's not. There's all sorts of things that are going on when they're marking the floor and they're doing stuff in the ceiling and all sorts of things. If you get the hand on and the hand off right, people are very, very, very willing to work with a robot because they know that it does the task better, right? And so I think with hotel rooms, I think the same is true. It's actually a very structured environment. Like most of the rooms with the same sort of layout, you can go to roughly the same place on the floor in each room and do the disinfection. The issue is to try to get into that workflow and to do it in the right way. And no one has ever really looked at that for hotels before, because in order to get into a hotel room and clean the hotel room, you've got to make the bed, you've got to clean the toilet, you've got to do all these things that are fiddly and very difficult for a robot. If you're just shining your UV light on high-touch surfaces, it's actually not that hard. What you've got to try and do is just really understand the business process and where the robot can fit in without upsetting the apple cart in terms of the way they do things thus far.
Thanks, Alex. Great answer.
And a great presentation, Alex. Thanks for sharing everything you're doing at August Robotics. As you said at the start, I appreciate it was only a small slither of what the business does. So thanks for sharing that slither, and best of luck to August Robotics. Look, I could, as moderating this panel, I could quite happily stay on for hours. I'm so fascinated by all the presenters and what they've had to offer today. But alas, time is up. And Juliet, Andrew, and Phoebe, you're welcome to come back onto video. But Ian, perhaps I'll hand back to you to wrap up. Thanks, mate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for bearing with us. This is not a long wrap up. That's the good news. That was terrific. Everything I anticipated. I love hearing from startups. I love chatting to them. Heath, thank you for stepping in and doing a great job at MC and facilitating so well. Thanks again to the startups. Again, I said it at the start, I'll say it again, you were the talent tonight, and we really appreciate your insights and doing what you're doing. It is so bloody hard running a startup, and kudos to you for doing it. So Phoebe, Andrew, Julia, Alex, thank you so much. Yeah, Alex, particularly thanks for getting through the Chinese firewall. We had a couple of challenges at the start, but we overcame them. Kim, Martin, Andrea, Ben, great job. Love you guys. Really appreciate the work you're doing and for putting it together. Susie, thanks for helping to organize. And Heath, yeah, once again, thanks for day sharing. And thank you everyone for sticking with us and coming along. I am going to press stop here. So it's kind of a rather brutal stop. So thank you, everyone. And we will hopefully see you in one of these events very soon. So take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye, everyone.